Wonderful. So let's start today's SCM Talk Show. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of SCM Talk Show. As we said earlier, we have this talk show every fortnight. So last one was on 29th of August, and today is 12th September that we have. And all the topics have been chosen from the responses to the survey that we sent it to all of you. And as Nistush said, the session will be recorded and made available for free on KnoWerX mobile app as well as KnoWerX YouTube channel. And we'll put everyone on the listen only mode, and please also switch off your video. I and Greg, probably you can see us. If you have any questions, what you can do is you can type the question in the chat box, and we will take few questions which have been asked most of the times towards the end of the session. So before I proceed, it's my pleasure to introduce Greg Schlegel, CPIM, CSP, Jonah. And I think on this topic of risk management, you will not find any better speaker than Greg throughout this world, and Greg is the founder of the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium, where 25 companies bring skills, solutions, and methodologies that identify, access, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. He has been a supply chain executive for several Fortune 100 and have been a supply chain executive consultant for IBM. He is executive in resident at Lehigh University teaching supply chain risk management, adjunct professor teaching enterprise risk management for Villanova University's EMBA program, and VP principal at ShareTrack LLC. Greg was also APIC's 1997 International Society president. So I welcome Greg to this talk show.
Ravindra, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be with you and your audience today to share some of our insights on what we call COVID-19 and the 3 R's: respond, recover, and renew. So if you're ready to act as the facilitator, I'm ready to move forward and talk about our agenda.
All right.
You can click. There we go. Good. All right. What we recently said is we would move the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium and EIG Group Alliance discussion at the end, so we can talk about that at the end. The agenda is really for you all is we'd like to talk. We'd like to begin the talk chatting about what is a resilient enterprise. Then we'll go into what we call COVID-19 and the W-like recovery, and the 3 R's: respond, recover, and renew. We'll talk a little bit about the bullwhip effect, which is affecting us all in supply chains. We'll give you a little more context into each one of the 3 R's with some recent global studies about COVID-19 and the impacts. We'll have some COVID takeaways, meaning what to do now and later, and then essentially we'll open it up for any questions that you might have. So with that, I think we could move on to a couple of clicks. We can move beyond that one, Ravindra. We said we'll hold off on that. You could move again. Again, we'll talk about these at the end if you'd like. A couple more clicks. Sorry, some of these are billed. This one, our point of view on the resilient enterprise. Yep, one more. Here we go. What is an enterprise resilience? What is a resilient enterprise, if you will? We have 2 kind of grounding definitions for you that we'd like to share. First is from our book. Book's been out about 4.5 years, doing quite well. co-author with our Director of Supply Chain, Dr. Robert Trent at Lehigh University here in the States. But what is a resilient enterprise? Our definition is a resilient enterprise has the capacity to overcome disruptions and continually transform itself to meet the changing needs and expectations of its customers, shareholders, and other stakeholders. Folks, that's a pretty tall order, really. But that's the best definition of a resilient enterprise that we have seen in a long time, and we've placed it in the book. The next definition is really the what to do and the how to build out a resilient enterprise, and we call that supply chain risk management. It's the implementation of strategies to manage everyday and exceptional risks along the entire supply chain, continuously assessing those risks with the objective of doing what? Reducing your vulnerability and ensuring business continuity. One way to think of supply chain risk management is the intersection of good supply chain management and solid risk management. So with that definition, we can move forward, Ravindra. All right, with this, I'm not sure, there we go. With this is a build slide, so bear with me. We wanted to also get you grounded on what we call our resilient enterprise maturity model. This is the long haul model. As you see, there's 4 basic stages: visibility, predictability, resiliency, and sustainability. On the left-hand side, the y-axis, we have enterprise risk maturity from low to high. Excuse me. On the x-axis, we have competitive advantage from 0 to infinity. Keep going. The slide jumped. Sorry about that. There we go. I'll give you a little more definition of the 4 stages. In visibility, what do we mean? Visibility within your supply chain. Visibility upstream to your supplier, folks, and visibility downstream to your customers. Most of us don't have very good visibility in our entire supply chain. That's why we start first. Next is predictability. We call that sense and respond. It may not be exactly what you're thinking about. This is where we advocate you digitize your supply chain using models, all right, using computer models to digitize the supply chain in an effort to do what we call what-if scenario planning. That is running scenarios to witness how your supply chain will react to certain risk stimuli. Third stage is resiliency. This is where you embed all the new best practices, tools, techniques, methodologies that we're going to talk about today in this session, embed them into your supply chain risk management decisions. And then finally, sustainability, again, may not be what you're thinking. It's not green, going green. Sustainability in our maturity model says, how do we sustain this journey? The journey essentially is several years, folks. I'll be honest with you. These 4 stages, each stage is about 2.5 years in length, all right? So it's sustainability in terms of the journey, and one of the methodologies we advocate is ERM, Enterprise Risk Management. On the top of the screen, you'll see our mantra. Essentially, the mantra is identify your risks, assess those risks, mitigate those risks, and manage those risks. And then if you could click again, Ravindra, a couple more clicks. Yep, on the bottom, what we tend to do is we like to superimpose a heat map on top of our model. And the heat map is a risk profile. And therefore, you'll see if you don't have good visibility in your supply chain, we think your supply chain is at a very high risk. As you move up the maturity model from left to right, you can see that the risk will, your inherent risk will be reduced as you move up the model. And this is more or less a maturity model to essentially answer the question, where are you as an organization on this maturity model as it relates to good supply chain risk and resiliency? All right, moving right along. Next slide. We said we'd talk a little bit about the COVID-19. We call it the W-like recovery and the 3 R's. So with that, we can move to the next slide. Folks, this is a snapshot of the Global 19 risk event profile from Johns Hopkins University. They are the organization at the moment who is capturing and codifying all the COVID-19 risk cases. As you can see on the top left, we have over 28 million cases identified around the world. In the middle is the world map, kind of a heat map. I use that term loosely. And then on the right-hand side are the global fatalities and deaths and people are the number who have recovered. So sadly enough, the US is leading in number of fatalities. You can see the top 4 organizations, and then you can see the number of cases on the left side as well. So this is our global risk event, and we need to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage those risks in our supply chain. So with that, we can move on to the next slide, if you will. This is a profile of our COVID-19 W-like recovery and what we call the 3 R's. And I'll just go through very briefly to give you some context associated with the slide, all right? The picture going forward to us is more of a supply chain risk continuum from left to right. On the top of the graph, from left to right, are the government mandates. You can see them: lockdown, reopen, first normal, nth tier new normal. On the y-axis on the left is our segmentation of the global supply and demand arena. On the top left, we have the over demand and under supply dilemma, which all the healthcare organizations witnessed early on in March around the world, especially for what we call PPE, personal protection equipment in healthcare. All right. In the middle of the slide, we have our baseline. And this is where supply and demand is in relative balance in the middle of the slide. On the bottom left, we have the under demand and oversupply for every other industry sector except healthcare during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then on the x-axis, at the bottom of the graph, we have our perspectives regarding the responses to demand and supply shocks, and that is respond, recover, and renew. So that's a brief discussion of the 3 R's. We can go a little deeper on the next slide, if you will, Ravindra, and we'll give you some additional context on the 3 phases. Very good. Very good. Again, you'll see the the perspectives on the left. You'll see the government mandates on the top. You can see the bullwhip, if you will, going left to right, and the three essential phases. And the three phases, we'll just go through them. I'll briefly describe each element of each phase, just so you get some context, and then we'll move on. On the respond phase, you want to ensure, companies need to ensure their staff and their partners' safety. You have to over communicate hourly to your staff, your partners, your suppliers, and your customers. We advocate you develop and run crisis teams. If you haven't, you should. Many of us didn't have that, but we put people together in crisis team rooms, war rooms we call them, to try to handle demand and supply. You need to be connected with your partners, as we said. You need to prioritize your key and new products, all right? Because not all products are the same during this risk event, and you need to prioritize those new and raw materials associated with the new and or prioritized products. And then you're going to have to source logistics and watch your cash, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. In the second phase, the recover phase, again, we advocate you ensure the safety for everyone, follow the CDC guidelines. You have to connect with your old and new customers, folks, all right? Especially new customers if you've renewed or reinvented your product portfolio. You may have new customers and you need to connect with them constantly. Possibly you need to go on allocation. Allocation is an ugly word in supply chain, folks, but allocation means you're appealing to your best customers in terms of trying to keep them whole in terms of providing product. You'll probably need to strive for new balance in the supply-demand curve. Not sure exactly where you might be in those three phases, but it's an ongoing process at the moment. And we would advocate that you drive supply chain decisions based on a risk reward and cost benefits. That's the recover phase. In the renew phase on the right, we advocate you improve your visibility, map out your supply chain, identify your risks. Most of us don't do this. You need to quantify and assess those risks. You need to digitize your supply chain and begin to do what-if scenarios. We advocate you build what we call risk response plans for those scenarios. And you might even want to subscribe to a global risk alert solution and get educated. There are many global risk alert solutions out there, folks. And you can get educated with best practice. All right, next slide. Thank you. The bullwhip effect. You can go to the next slide, Ravindra. Yep. Click on the next slide, please. Up. Come back one if you can. I think we're ahead of ourselves. Apologize for that. There we go. Thank you. I just wanted to start with this slide, folks, and that is an overall COVID global recovery timeline of sorts by country. This comes from friends of the Consortium, company called the Conference Board here in the States. This was a sentiment analysis picture as of May 1st, 2020. Over on the bottom left, we have the consumer sentiment analysis from their surveys, and I just want to give you a sense of what it means. The yellow, the somewhat yellow color, they felt those countries would rebound fairly quickly, and remember, this is as of May 1st. The orange, the sentiment was those countries would recover, but slower. And then the red indicated that the individuals felt that these countries would remain depressed for a sustained period of time. So you can take a look at the profile, and that is the best timeline that we have seen for the worldwide recovery. And I wanted to share that with you before we talk about the next slide. Go ahead, Ravindra, if you can. There we go. Again, this is somewhat of an eye chart, folks, but essentially what I want to do is just make you aware. And this is a little perhaps closer to home for all you in the audience. This is our member, Resilience 360. They are a supply chain risk management solution company. All right. They are a risk alert company and a logistics company. They are part of DHL. DHL updates this coronavirus outbreak every day, folks. And because they can do this, because DHL is so large. DHL has 500,000 employees. They're all logisticians on the ground around the world. So they have 1 million eyeballs watching all the logistics in and outbound freight and so forth around the world. So I wanted to share this with you just to give you a few images or threads, and that is in the middle are the 4 stages. Those stages are social distancing in the middle, impact on business, essentially restrictions, and then when those restrictions might ebb or be turned off. Just a little bit closer to home under the Asia Pacific on the left, I highlighted them with a check mark. As you can see, Asia Pac, as of July, had several red, yellow, and green, if you will, stages. The legend is on the bottom right, and that legend basically is green is a limited regulation, yellow is moderate, and red is pretty stringent. As you can see, back in July, Resilience 360 was basically letting all their customers and all their users know that that India had several restrictions, significant restrictions in terms of logistics, inbound, outbound, across borders, etc. And the reason I just wanted to bring this up is, folks, this is free. It's free. I put the URL on the bottom. They do this every day. There are many, many, many reports and webinars. All you have to do is click on the URL, enter your name, your email address, and you can receive this and many other daily reports for free. Gives you a good sense of what's happening globally from a logistics point of view around the world. So I wanted to share that with you. All right, next slide, Ravindra, if you will. Because of all the what we call the fits and starts, the lockdowns, etc., you've now seen it. We've talked a little bit about the impacts. What we see emerging and happening to all of us in supply chain is the infamous bullwhip effect, and we call it the bullwhip effect on steroids. What is the bullwhip effect? We can read the definition in the middle. The bullwhip effect is the uncertainty caused from distorted information flowing upstream and downstream in your supply chain. On the left-hand side, top left, we have its effects on the demand side. The left side of that little graph is basically the customer. Customers on the left. A small change in the amplitude of demand at the customer can manifest itself into quite a large disruption going through the supply chain back to the supplier. On the right-hand side is the supply side impact. And that basically is the left side of that graph. The factory can experience a risk event which disrupts the flow of goods downstream to the ultimate manufacturer and their customers. And thus, when you put both the demand and supply disruptions onto a graph, folks, in the bottom, which is exactly what all the sectors around the world have been wrestling with for the last 5 months, basically you have what we would call the W effect. And this can happen several times. And so this is essentially what's going on in many, many different supply chain sectors. The bullwhip effect of distortions, disruptions in both information and flow between customers, contractors, and suppliers. Next slide, please. All right, we said we'd give you a little more context for each phase. So next slide, Ravindra, if you will. Great. In the respond phase, the first of the 3 are phases. In respond, this is a COVID picture. And again, you see on the top right, that's our COVID recovery continuum. The first phase is respond. We have some data to share with you down in the bottom right. This data comes from friends of the consortium again, a company called IRM, the Institute of Risk Management. They're a UK-based risk organization. They recently, back in April, did a worldwide COVID-19 survey. We wanted to share a couple of different responses associated with that survey within each of our 3 phases. So in the respond phase, they asked these questions. What were the top 10 immediate impacts of COVID-19 to your company, regardless of your sector? The red indicates these were major, and the blue indicate that these were significant impacts. And I'll just go down the list for you to get a sense of what this survey found. Number 1, rapid changes in objectives and your work, of course. Second, delays in projects, sure. Third, delays in hiring talent, but of course. Distractions from your key business objectives, sure. Loss of sales and revenue, goes without saying. Positive reputational opportunity, yes. This was interesting. You know, remember, risk management has 2 sides of the coin. One company's risk event is another company's risk opportunity. So that's where this answer emerged. Problems with your suppliers, of course. Staff absences due to sickness, yes. 2 more, contractor issues, if you have any, regardless of whether they're material contractors or service, and then cybersecurity. So those were the top 10 immediate impacts. Essentially, hold on. Those are the top 10 impacts from a survey back in April. We have more for you. Next slide. Also, this is in the response phase. Again, over in the right, top right, we have our respond recovery continuum. This also comes from the conference board, but it's US centric. And this was back in April and May. The conference board here in the US did a quick study, again, pretty expansive, and more or less took it by, asked the question about jobs, this sector, who lost or gained the most jobs immediately during the lockdown. And remember, in every CAT event, you have winners and losers, two sides of the risk coin. At the bottom, you can see the immediate growth sectors. You can see that food, services, and drinking places like restaurants took the brunt of the job loss immediately when everything was locked down. On the bottom were the growth areas. They were in air cargo, warehousing, transportation, and logistics, the folks who move goods in and around the supply chain. So we wanted to share that with you. Next, please. This is now in the recover phase. Second R, again, more findings from our IRM friends, and they ask these questions. What factors helped you recover? And I'll go down top to bottom. Again, the red were major and the blue were significant factors. Excuse me. Top left, modern state-of-the-art technology. Absolutely. Number two, good communication processes. We mentioned that. Three, high level of quality leadership. All right. Crisis management capabilities. Fourth, education and risk management. Absolutely. Music to our ears. Companies had business continuity plans. They may have gone through some scenario plans, maybe not to this scope, but they probably had some scenarios where they built out business continuity plans. That's terrific. Next, work done on resilience. Terrific. Next one, past investment in risk management, whether that means hiring people, implementing solutions that we've talked about, and more. And finally, this one is music to our ears, work done on supply chain risk management. Very encouraging for us as supply chain risk evangelists. All right, one more slide on this, I believe. This is the renew phase. This is the third phase now. Again, you can see the phases up on the top right on our continuum. These are, again, findings from IRM. They basically ask these questions as it relates to renew, the third stage. And again, the green, they ask the question, how likely are these in terms of changes in risk management? How likely are these changes in terms of supply chain and risk management? That was the theme of these questions. Again, the green, very likely, and the blue, quite likely. So very encouraging here as well. Top to bottom, greater focus on resiliency going forward. Absolutely, music to our ears. Greater board interest in risk, but of course, excuse me, now, not everyone is going to be great at supply chain risk and resiliency, even though they experience the risk event, because culture drives risk management. But greater board interest in risk, very encouraging. More focus on operational resilience. Next, understand risk complexities. They are complex out there, folks. Our supply chains are very, very complex networks around the globe. Focusing on scenario planning, that's very encouraging. We advocate that. New risk management techniques, yes, there are best practices out there. Greater role for risk experts, absolutely. Risk quantification skills, that means folks who understand how to quantify and assess the risks that are identified. A demand for supply chain risk skills, again, music to our ears as risk evangelists, and increased investment going forward in risk management. But of course, we can certainly hope that these likelihoods come to fruition going forward for those of us who survived the COVID-19 risk event. Okay, next slide, please. Actually, you can go one more. We thought we'd basically end the discussion with, I guess, insights from the consortium over the last 6 months. This comes from our 6-month experience with consulting in 23 countries for our clients and friends of the consortium. And so we wanted to share with you more or less a supply chain risk mitigation coronavirus takeaway. All right, here's what we're advocating to anyone who will listen in terms of how to survive and thrive going forward through these 3 R phases. Up top, what to do now in the short term. A little bit of a reintroduction. Ensure the safety of your staff and partners every day. You have to over communicate to everyone in your supply chain. Identify your key suppliers and partners in the affected areas. This is why we shared with you the Resilience 360 status, because they're looking at every country around the world, all the ports. You need to know when a certain supplier is available to work and begin work and start shipping. Understand those suppliers and partners' status. Keep in close contact. Attempt to secure alternative sources of supply if you can. Prioritize critical materials and expedite them daily. Yes, you're going to have to do that and probably pay more money for those services. Alternate logistics capabilities. Again, not everyone is working, so that is a difficult project. And please watch your cash flow. We have 2 recommendations for you. Remember, cash flow, we call that a red line issue. If you can't produce cash, you don't have a business. That's the red line issue. So to support that, we advocate using 2 techniques. One is explore what we call the Altman Z-score. It's been around for 40 years, folks. It's a set of algorithms that has been produced in the United States at NYU University. It's 2 algorithms. All you need is income data from the income statement and a balance sheet. And there are algorithms you can Wikipedia the Altman Z-score. Why would you want to do this? Because, folks, the Altman Z-score has over a 95% accuracy rating in terms of predicting bankruptcy 12 to 15 months into the future. Who wouldn't want to know that about their key suppliers, especially in this risk event? So you can Wikipedia Altman Z-score. There are 2 types of algorithms for both private companies and public companies. All you need is income data and balance sheet data, and you can calculate the Altman Z-score for any company. And the beauty of it, folks, is the Altman Z-score is a heat map. When you calculate the quotient from the algorithms, it turns it into red, yellow, green. Green is good, red is not good, all right? So you can Wikipedia the Altman Z-score. That is one way to look forward in terms of evaluating your supplier and contractor financial health. The other is cash conversion cycle. If you're not using cash conversion cycle as a metric of good supply chain management and risk, please do. You can Wikipedia cash conversion cycle. It's inventory days of supply plus receivables days of supply minus payables days of supply. Very simple to calculate. Take a look at it, because then you can start to measure your cash flow and also key suppliers All right. What to do later in the next 6 months. We'll just give you our advocate example, and that is, as you survive and thrive, folks, please take a look at your entire supply chain's visibility. It's a critical success factor. Exercise good risk assessment for all your supply chain risks. Identify those risks, then quantify those risks. Maybe plot those risks across a supply chain. You can do it manually. You can map out a small product line, supply chain with suppliers, contractors, plants, warehouses, distribution centers, and so forth. You can do that manually. Then identify the risks associated with that small supply chain and then assess those risks. We advocate you continue to monitor the risks inside your company and out, which means you can subscribe to a risk alert solution. They're out there and they're not $1 million. They're software as a service. They're in the cloud. Companies like Resilience 360, NC4, Risk Methods, they all watch every hour on the hour around the globe and identify and capture risk events that may be pertinent to your supply chain. We advocate you digitize your supply chain. We call them digital twins when you can, all right? So you can run what if scenarios so that you can witness how your supply chain will react to risk. Build out those risk response plans once you run scenarios for what we call the high value at risk scenarios. And then utmost is get it educated, folks. There are best practices out there. There are books, not just ours, but there are many more books out there talking about best practices and articulating to you what the exemplar companies do. There are at least 300 exemplar companies who do everything we've talked about today and more. They're out there, and the books and the workshops and these best practices give you a sense of what they do every day to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage risks. There are also online certificate courses, including ours, which I believe I put a URL, Ravindra, on the bottom of this slide, I believe. Take a look. There are courses out there now. We have two. There's a basic course, and there's also a course now in public health care, all right? Meaning all the best practices are in there, tools, techniques, and you receive a certificate of completion from Lehigh University. So it's truly, both of the courses are truly MBA-like courses with report outs, with assessment tools, and then you receive a certificate of completion. So with that, that more or less concludes our discussion. Ravindra, I don't know if you want me to go through the consortium or if you just want us to answer any questions.
So Nistush, do we have questions, or we can go with the introduction of consortium?
Yeah, so up till now, we are just waiting for questions to come in. Request everyone to please put in your questions in the chat box. In the meanwhile, you can take it ahead with the other part.
Yeah, I'd be more than willing to, I think we have a little bit of time. I'd be more than willing to answer any questions that anyone has. If not, we can go through and give you a little more profile of what the consortium does. So we can do both.
So I guess you can talk about the consortium, Greg, first. And
yeah, sure. Maybe that'll give that might spark a question or two. Here's a profile of the. I think we have 28 companies in the consortium, and just to give you a sense, the companies run from pure consulting, Lean Six Sigma, pure risk, business continuity, supply chain modeling, supply chain risk management tracking, like DHL and so forth. They all bring certain core competencies that essentially support our end-to-end vision of supply chain risk management from our book. That's how we build our consortium. And so it's really probably the most comprehensive set of companies that are totally focused on supply chain risk and resiliency. On the left-hand side, what do? Well, here's what we provide. We have, I mentioned, we have online education. We now have 2 bona fide MBA courses online with a learning management system partner. One is basic supply chain risk. The other is brand new, and it is supply chain risk and resiliency in the public healthcare. So very timely. And it takes a lot of tools, techniques, methodologies, and best practices and aligns them with the unique issues that public healthcare supply chains are dealing with today. So we have 2 online educations. We do virtual training like this. Folks, since March, we do about 3 to 4 webinars each week around the globe. Classroom training. Before COVID, we used to do about 25 workshops. Some of the workshops are 3 to 5 days in duration, but we used to do about 25 face-to-face workshops talking about these best practices, going through the assessment, all the things we've talked about all around the world. And again, we work in about 23 countries. We bring, with the virtual training and classroom training, we bring certificates and certifications. We support some certificates and certifications from companies like ASCM. We're tightly aligned with the old Apex group. We support their certificate. We support the Logistics Institute of Canada's certification. And now we have our own certificate of completion using the 2 online educations. We assess, we mitigate, and we coach the journey, folks. We lead, guide, direct, and coach companies through those 4 major stages of the maturity model. We bring supply chain risk and resilience visibility, such as DHL and Resilience 360. There's another company called NC4 who's been in business for 15 years, and they capture and codify risk alerts, no matter what it is, around the globe every hour. We bring supply chain risk and resiliency best practices. That comes from our book. And we also are building supply chain war rooms. Many of the exemplars like IBM, Flextronics, Nokia, Ericsson, Coca-Cola, BMW, Mercedes, many of those exemplar companies, folks, have supply chain risk management war rooms. One you may not think about is a retail apparel company who is very, very good. They are an exemplar. You may know Zara. Zara is worldwide. They are an exceptional exemplar in both supply chain practices, performance, and supply chain risk. And they built their own multi-million-dollar supply chain risk war room where they monitor their supply chain, all the nodes around the globe, 24/7, 365. So that gives you a sense of what we have and what we provide and what we do. All right. Any other questions pop up or no?
Oh, yes. We have got one question here. So let me just take that up right now. It's from Nishant S. So the question says, can you please clarify about positive reputation opportunity? How COVID impacts that?
All right, let me see if I understand the question. can we talk about that positive reputational approach to risk? Is that the question?
That's right.
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, not everyone thinks this way, folks, but you have to think about risk as a double-edged sword. Remember, one company's risk event can be another company's risk opportunity. And I'll give you an example. Here in the United States, when our government essentially closed down everything and then started to invoke these lockdown procedures where they started to advocate to companies in the United States, can you change your manufacturing profile to produce PPEs, personal protection equipment, masks, shields, and so forth. One of the companies who responded rather quickly is a company called 3M. They're worldwide. They basically told the US government, we're ready, willing, and able to modify our supply chain, modify our product portfolio like you saw in our Continuum. They modified their portfolio, rearranged their entire supply chain, all their manufacturing to do what? Produce personal protection equipment for the US government. Now, did they get paid? Yes. All right. But they totally revamped and reinvented their product portfolio because they were not making PPE equipment. All right. That's just one. Another US based company who we know has modified and reinvented their portfolio and leveraged their manufacturing capability is Ford, the automobile company. So, again, one company's risk event or a global event can be another company's risk opportunity to essentially grow revenue, all right, gain new market share, enter new markets. That's what those folks, when they answered the question, that's what they meant by positive reputational risk management, because they came, they saw, they reinvented themselves, they marketed it, and they were very successful, especially producing personal protection equipment. Hope I answered your question.
I think that was a wonderful answer, Mr. Craig. So I will wait for more questions if people have. In the meanwhile, I have shared the link of Mr. Craig and Mr. Ravindra to connect with them on LinkedIn. So in case if you have questions post the session, you can always connect with them over LinkedIn and ask your doubts. So we'll just wait for a couple of more questions. In the meanwhile, Mr. Ravindra, you can have a quick conversation with Craig.
Thanks.
So let me unmute myself. Greg, you gave a very rounded, guideline, for companies, what needs to be done and what they can do. Now, going further, what individuals can do in this area of risk management for them to be able to guide their companies, handle the risk management properly. So I'm talking about education, training, certification, what kind of preparedness they can have. So what is going to be the career opportunities in the future in the area of risk management?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, Ravindra, we're like you all, we're evangelists. We are academics. We teach, we consult, and we do workshops. So we're evangelists. It's a great question. I would advocate that your listeners, your audience, essentially canvass the internet. You could always look for the APEX, the ASCM. They have a 12 contact hour certificate. We support that with our body of knowledge, but it comes from ASCM. All right, they're having a problem now because it was face to face. So they're talking about turning that face-to-face with Greg, 7 hours, 1 day workshop, we're talking about turning that into virtual training and basically doing like a 2-day, break it up into like 3 hours a piece, and breaking up 12 contact hours into multiple segments like this, maybe 2-hour segment at a time, and then hopefully you can receive your ASCM excuse me, certificate. That's one avenue. Another avenue is a Canadian partner, the Logistics Institute of Canada. They are providing, they're a designation company just like ASCM, only more in logistics. They have a certification called Supply Chain Resiliency. We support that with our online course, and so you can move through the Logistics Institute of Canada, go into our course through the Canadian partner, take the course, pass the course, and then you receive a Lehigh certificate from us, and also a certification from the Logistics Institute of Canada. That's another avenue. And then the third avenue is you can purchase our book. It's online, it's on Amazon. You can read the book if that is how you'd like to acquire insight. The book has a lot of everything we talked about is in the book, including exemplars, a lot of caselets. So if reading the book appeals to you, you could buy the book. I think it's like $80 US off Amazon. They'll deliver it. And then the final approach is you can go online. Now, again, face-to-face is very limited right now around the world. So we've actually put together these 2 online courses, and you can break the courses up into 3 levels. You can buy one at a time, and you'll receive all the tools, techniques, the best practices. We have caselets, we have quizzes, we have assessments using assessment tools, and at the end of the 3 levels, you receive a certificate from Lehigh University in supply chain risk and resiliency. So those are just a few of the opportunities where folks can learn about best practices. And we want to reiterate this, Ravindra, there are best practices now. There are tools, techniques, and methodologies where once you understand them, you can leverage them to essentially move your company forward in that 4-stage maturity model. And in fact, one more, if I have time, one more thought for your audience, and that is we are now putting together another assessment tool online, a cloud-based tool, where you can answer about 85, 90 questions on what's your risk appetite, where are you in our maturity model, and essentially what we will do is draw some pictures, tell you what kind of risk appetite you have, position you on that 4-stage maturity model, and then give you, using artificial intelligence and machine language, because we've been in this business for 12 years, totally online, totally hands-free, your audience will get a 90-day action plan based on where you are in the maturity and who you are as a company culture in terms of risk appetite. And you get a 90-day plan based on those tools, techniques, and the way you answered the question. So that's very exciting to us because people also need, as you mentioned, Ravindra, action plans. What do I do today, tomorrow, in the next couple of months to survive, and then I can thrive later? So hopefully I gave you a couple profiles of what your audience can experience.
Thank you so much. So excellent path for, I think, individuals and companies to follow. So I think we don't have much time left now, so I will request you to give a vote of thanks and close the session.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much for this great presentation and a wonderful session, Mr. Craig. So on behalf of KnoWerX Education, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you for taking out time. For the audience, it is currently probably it would have been 7 a.m., but he started at 6:15 a.m. For the show. So thank you so much for taking out time and joining us for the India's first ever SCM talk show. This was the third episode. And secondly, I would like to thank Mr. Ravindra Tulsyan for hosting the event and making it so much interactive. We always keep learning from all the new topics and all the new knowledge being shared. So as I have given out in the chat box, if you want to connect with the speakers, I have mentioned their LinkedIn profile. Thank you everyone for joining in the third episode. We are going to come up with the next episode, which is on 26th of September. The topic for that is something which is very close to all the supply chain professionals. It's based on the trends and techniques in sourcing and procurement. So I'm sure a lot of people are looking to listen on the procurement part. We would be revealing the speaker of the same very soon on our social media platforms. So kindly do follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and Instagram to have an update about the next session, exact topic, and the speaker for the same. Let me assure you, the speaker is one of the best persons in the global sourcing and procurement sector in one of the top companies. So kindly wait for the speaker to be revealed. Please do follow us on the social media platforms. If you like the concept of SCM talk show, or if you like the session, please do spread the word in the whole SCM community. We would like this talk show to be taken to as many people as possible. And you can also download our KnoWerX app. If you're not aware, we play a national SCM quiz across, which has every Tuesday and Friday. It has questions, and if you can give out your answers, and every month we give out prizes to people who rank top on the leaderboard. So it's called as India SCM leaderboard. So there's a place where you can showcase your knowledge. So please do download our app and you can play the quiz there. I have sent in the app link also to you on the chat. If you want to suggest any speaker, if you want to suggest any topic, if you want to nominate anyone, please do write us on tcd@knowwerx.com, or you can connect with us on our WhatsApp number, again, which has been shared with you in the chat box. In cases that if you have any doubt, please connect with KnoWerX directly. Uh, Thank you so much once again for everyone to joining. I will see you again. We will see you again on 26th September at 4 p.m. on the same link. Till then, goodbye and have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Greg and thanks to everyone. Thanks, Jistush. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.